What's going on, everybody? Eddie Soundhead back once again here with Soundhead Entertainment, and we are back in NASCAR Heat 4 today for something a little bit different. I wanted to do a little bit of an Indianapolis recap. It was the cutoff race for the playoffs for the Cup Series, and it was quite the race indeed. There's a lot to talk about, so I figured why not throw some gameplay in the background and we'll dig right into it. So, of course, the biggest story going into Indianapolis was the playoff cutoff. And it was pretty tight. It was a four-driver race pretty much between Clint Bowyer, Daniel Suarez, Jimmy Johnson, and Ryan Newman. And there were some pretty intense battles and moments during the race where the points were on the line. And it looks like maybe some drivers would be in, some drivers would be out, and it changed a lot during the race. So the playoff cutoff line storyline going into Indianapolis and then throughout the race was actually very, very interesting. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Kevin Harvick, of course, qualified on the pole. He seemed to have a really fast car pretty much all day, and he was able to prove that right off the bat by taking the lead and putting the car where it needed to be to get a nice gap on the rest of the field. He was pretty much able to pull away whenever there was a long run and left the other guys basically just trying to chase him down. They really couldn't catch him. The closest car to doing so was Joey Logano. They had a couple of battles during the day, but right off the start of the race, it was Harvick out front. And that's when we had the first incident of the day. Daniel Suarez, one of the playoff hopefuls for the cutoff line, trying to point his way in, scrapes the wall, much like you just saw on screen, but on the exit of turn 2. And it was a really crucial mistake for Suarez to make at a time where he really could not afford to make any. When you're right on that cutoff line, trying to make your way in, trying to point your way in, it was pretty obvious Suarez was not going to have the winning speed he needed to get the W. So damaging the car almost right off the bat was just about the worst case scenario you could get. You don't know how bad the damage was, but even a little hit like that can change the car at a big track like Indianapolis. That aerodynamics are so important. And when you get behind like that, you know, it just spells trouble for you, really. And I'm sure a lot of us want to see Daniel Suarez succeed. I know I do, but when you spend 2 years at Joe Gibbs Racing, another year at Stewart-Haas Racing, and you don't have any wins to show for it, meanwhile your teammates are tearing it up, you know, it's pretty telltale that maybe Suarez isn't ready for a Cup Series ride. Maybe he never will be. Now, I don't know how much time Suarez has left on the clock. I gotta imagine if he doesn't get some wins or start showing some really good, consistent results, that he's gonna be on the hot seat pretty soon. Another interesting thing about that was that the caution came out almost immediately when he hit the wall. And it wasn't a very hard hit. It was more of a sort of bounce off, keep going. Yeah, you got some damage. There's a little bit of smoke coming off the tire, but it wasn't anything that if I were a race director, I would have called a caution for. I would have let him drive it back around because it didn't seem like something that was going to cause an immediate hazard. It just seemed like he bounced off the wall and kept going. But because maybe he was a playoff hopeful, NASCAR gave him a little break with the caution. It's always kind of hard to determine those things. But, you know, a little later we had some inconsistency with some cautions, and it makes you wonder. Now, of course, the restarts were pretty much the star of the show all day long, and it was no different on the next restart because Kurt Busch got some damage racing side by side with Ryan Blaney on the restart, and it was a really chaotic restart. Brad Keselowski actually challenged Harvick for the lead a little bit, but ended up falling back. Harvick got a really good run through turn 3 after Keselowski sailed it all the way down on the bottom and tried to make it stick, but it could not. Harvick got back around him, took the lead, and then later on in the stage, we saw one of the hardest crashes of the season from Landon Cassill, and it would not be the only one we'd see today, but Landon Cassill blew that tire going into turn 1, destroyed the entire right side of that Starcom racing machine, but thankfully he was able to get out because it was such a hard hit. There was even roof damage, which you very rarely see in NASCAR unless the car actually flips over. So to see that just from a wall hit was pretty scary. It took him a few moments to take down the window net. I wouldn't be surprised by that. I'm sure it knocked the wind out of him, but it was good to see him walk out of that car and be okay. Now on the restart with 9 to go in the stage, Ryan Newman actually started on the inside, but dropped back a little bit, and then more chaos as Eric Jones and Brad Keselowski get together. Eric Jones hits the wall hard with the back end of the car, and Brad Keselowski has one of the scarier wrecks that we've seen this season, as well as he goes hard into a tire barrier, and the car actually goes up on its side, sort of climbs up the tire barrier about halfway, and was just sitting at a very weird angle, one you don't usually see. Luckily, Brad was able to get out pretty much immediately. He had some criticisms for the wall angle there. It is a very strange angle, but there's not a lot that you can really do with that spot. I would be interested to see if they would come up with any solutions It seems like a very tricky part of the track to try and reconfigure because it's where the road course layout and the oval layout sort of meet. And so you really can't do anything with that wall, I feel like. I feel like it pretty much did about as good of a job as it's going to do. And I think those tires did a lot better job than a lot of people are giving them credit for, because had those tires not been there, that car would have been way destroyed, and Brad Keselowski might have been at risk of serious injury. Luckily, he was not, and I think we all have that tire barrier to thank for it. So Kyle Larson actually shows up a little bit at this point in the race, leads some laps. Unfortunately, it doesn't end up well for him a little bit later on, but he did actually take charge of things away from Kevin Harvick for a while, and that was pretty interesting to see. Kyle Larson showing up at Indianapolis. That would have been a very popular win had he been able to get it done. Now, of course, the next big news, another playoff contender has some problems. Kyle Busch blows up down the backstretch, and this is where we begin to talk a little bit about the inconsistencies of the caution flag. They brought out the caution again, going back to Suarez's incident very quickly for brushing the wall and bouncing off the wall, whatever you would like to call it. But when Kyle Busch blew his motor on the backstretch and produced a plume of smoke, they let him drive it all the way back. He was halfway down the backstretch when this happened. They let it drive all the way back to pit road, and only when the car stalled on pit road did they throw the caution. Now, to me personally, that would have been the caution where I would have called it immediately, not the Suarez one. Again, some inconsistencies there. Not a very good look to do that in the middle of a playoff cutoff race, but, you know, maybe it was just an honest mistake. There were some pit stops going on at the time under green flag. NASCAR could have tried to let them cycle out before throwing the yellow like they do every now and then, but I don't know. That seems like the kind of one where you call the caution as soon as you see something like that happen. There could be oil on the track. You don't want to risk somebody running over that and then going down to the next corner and not being able to turn. And then the restart action continues. Jimmie Johnson going for it all, knowing he has to be aggressive. It makes a 3-wide move down on the bottom, and contact with his teammate William Byron lands both of them in the wall. Jimmie Johnson crashes out of the race, ending his playoff hopes and ending his streak of being in every single NASCAR postseason since its inception. And with that, a lot of people, myself included, don't think it's too much to say that perhaps with this race at Indianapolis, the Jimmie Johnson era of NASCAR has come to a close. Now, that's not saying that his career is over by any means. He still has 10 more races this year to get a win, and he probably has all of next season to get a win. But I think that next season will probably be the last we see of Jimmie Johnson. But no matter when he decides to hang it up, Jimmie Johnson will undoubtedly go down as one of the greatest and most dominant NASCAR drivers of all time. And with those 7 championships, you won't be able to say names like Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt without Jimmie Johnson. Now, don't forget, the playoff cut line then gets a lot more interesting with Jimmie Johnson out of the picture. Now it's Ryan Newman, Daniel Suarez, and Clint Bowyer all fighting for those final 2 spots. Now, Kyle Larson, after showing some speed a little bit earlier and challenging Kevin Harvick for that lead and taking it even for a little while, he did end up spinning out and crashing into the inside wall, effectively ending his day as well and giving him his 6th DNF via crash of the season. And this was actually a lucky break for Kevin Harvick as well, because he was on pit road as this caution came out. He would cycle back out into the lead after everybody pit underneath the caution, basically putting him back in a situation where if he could nail the restarts, he would have a pretty good shot at the win. Speaking of restarts, we've got more restart chaos as Alex Bowman gets loose underneath Denny Hamlin in turn 2 and spins out, hitting the wall. He would be able to continue on. It was pretty light contact, and he would end up finishing 21st. That was not the last incident of the day, though. There was one more still to come, and it was Daniel Suarez hitting Matt Tifft down in turn 1. Matt Tifft goes up to the wall, crashes out of the race, and a lot of people are wondering, did Daniel Suarez do it on purpose? Because Ryan Newman, the man he has to chase down to get in the playoffs, was up at the front, and Daniel Suarez had a lot of ground to make up. A caution would have benefited him severely. So it makes you wonder, did Daniel Suarez cause that wreck on purpose? There's onboard video of it. You be the judge. But I'll say that it was very convenient for Daniel Suarez to have that caution come out so he could have another shot at hunting down Ryan Newman and getting those points to make it into the playoffs. So the restart happens with 9 laps to go, and for a split second, Ryan Newman and Daniel Suarez were side by side. Newman started one row ahead of Suarez, and for a moment, the gap was separated by 2 points, but it would not be enough. By the end of the race, the gap was 4 points. Suarez valiantly tried to hunt down Ryan Newman and get those points in spots that he needed, but he could not get them in time and could not get enough. Therefore, Clint Bowyer and Ryan Newman are your last two playoff lock-ins, with Daniel Suarez and Jimmy Johnson missing out. Of course, then it was pretty much smooth sailing for Kevin Harvick. He pulled an almost 6-second gap in the last 9 laps of the race over Joey Logano to take a dominant win, and his second Brickyard 400 win, his last coming in 2003. And with that, the playoffs were set. Kyle Busch is your regular season champion, although that was decided last week ahead of time because he had such a lead over Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, Chase Elliott, Kurt Busch, Alex Bowman, and Eric Jones. The rest of the drivers in the playoffs all pointed themselves in. That would be Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, William Byron, Eric Almirola, Clint Bowyer, and Ryan Newman. So that is your 2019 playoff grid, and we are just getting started with the fun. Now we have 10 races to decide who the final 4 will be at Homestead and who will take home the championship. So I leave you with some questions that you can answer down below in the comments. I'm very interested to hear your opinions. What did you think of Indianapolis? Do you think the attendance is an issue? Do you think they should race somewhere else like IRP, which is only down the road? And anything else you'd like to say, leave it down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.